Hi and welcome back for another art journaling video. Today I'm playing again in my handmade junk art journal, and as you see I have already primed the pages with gesso. I wanted to create a super blue background and I'm using all the blues I have here. The colors I'm using are from Amsterdam. These are one of my favorite acrylic paints. They have a super good quality and they are not so pricey. It's a super easy background to start with. I am always a little bit intimidated when I have a pure white page, and here I'm just adding the paints and then I will have a look what I'm going to create. I'm also adding in a little bit of white to get a more lighter color. I use a spatula to blend the colors. I love this tool. It's normally meant to be used in the kitchen, but I bought it to create with it. I have a set of 5 and I use these spatulas to add gesso to my pages and to use gel medium for collaging, and sometimes I use it to create the background. I noticed immediately that I have added way too much paint to the page, but I don't mind that. You see that I have these underpapers laying here to protect my book, and I love to use these papers for future projects or for pages in a new art journal. So I will add the rest of the paint just to one of these papers. This needs a bit time to dry, and while this is drying I'm preparing my main images. I want to use 2 birds today and I want to color them in with my new White Nights watercolors. They are more opaque and like a gouache, and that's the reason why I am embossing my birds in black. And I have used the Canson XL watercolor paper and black embossing powder from Ranger. And here you see me coloring in one of the birdies with these new watercolors. They are super nice pastel colors, but they are not transparent. That's important to know. But I really love how this turned out on this birdie. Unfortunately, I didn't recognize that my storage was full again. It always happens that I went out of storage because I'm recording a lot of videos, and I didn't notice that immediately, and it took me a while to be true, and so I don't have on camera how I color in the second birdie. And I also missed one step on the background, and that was stenciling these circles with a sponge and some white gesso. So I just used white gesso and a makeup sponge, and I stenciled some circles with a stencil. I can't tell you which brand it is, and that's all I have done. And here you see me adding some splatters. I want to use some pastel colors on top to match the birdies, and I'm using the Liquitex basic colors. I have a It's a really light pink. I can't remember which name it is, and it's also a violet. When this is dry, I'm going to add a border around the page. Therefore, I'm using one of my border stamps. It's from the Doodle Borders. I have no idea which one of the sets, but I will link it in the description box. I'm using StazOn Ink to stamp that because I'm working on acrylic paint, which is like a plastic. It dries the fastest and it's the best ink to stamp on these kind of surfaces. I add even more background stamping. Here I'm using the grungy sequins and I'm using the midnight blue StazOn Ink. I add even more texture with a stamp. It's also from the Textured Birdie stamp set, and these are just some tiny circles. As always, I have a link in my video description to my blog post where you can see some close-up images. I even add more art marks with the white Uni Posca marker. I outlined some of the circles, and here I'm adding some white dots. I felt that I need much more going on in the foreground of the page to create more dimension, so I decided to go in with more of the paints I've added the splatters with. So I am adding some pastel colors, and I just use a small flat brush to make some square kind of marks. It's always good to have a cool color like the blue on the background and use some warmer tones in the foreground because this creates more dimension. If you see something and it is a warm color, which means it's a yellow, orange or red color, then and it sits beneath a blue or a cold green or such, you think that the cooler colors are more far away than the warm colors, and that effect can be used in art, of course, and so it makes it easier to create dimension. I'm also coming in with some darker pinks, and I will add some of the violet, I believe, and also a mixture of that pink with white. Whenever I have leftover paint, I use one of my underpapers and add that to the papers. I also add some white marks because these pop up from the background even more, and because of the really white spots you get a wider tonal range, and this makes it even more interesting. When the background is dry, I am adding the birds, and I use just a simple wet glue to adhere them to the page. I just use a little tray to keep the birdie down. It takes a while until this heavyweight paper adheres to the page. To finish the page up, I'm adding a sentiment. I'm using the Mix a Sentiment stamp sets, and I have embossed them in white to black cardstock. And then I can cut out the words and use those I want to have. And here is the finished spread. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope we see us next time. Bye!